Hello and welcome to the Sober Bliss podcast with me, Gail, and my amazing guest. I finally quit drinking for good in March of 2018, and one of the things that helped me was connecting with people on the same journey as me, hearing their stories and finding inspiration. No matter where you are on your journey to sobriety, I hope you enjoy listening to these stories and hope they bring you inspiration, joy and light so you can find your own sober bliss. Hi everyone, and welcome to another podcast episode with me, Gail, from Sober Bliss. And today I'm so happy and delighted because I'm welcoming a lovely guest all the way from the US joining me today. And his name is Alex. Alex Bales is a personal trainer turned transformational coach who helps people effortlessly evolve from personal trauma and addiction to health and joy. Welcome, Alex. It's lovely to have you here.
Yes. Hello, Gail. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm honored, and I really appreciate it. And I love what you're doing. I think it's very honorable, and the more lives you can touch, and the more positivity you can spread around our message of sobriety. I think that's a great mission to be on. So thank you again.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. You and I had a lovely chat last week about what we're going to talk about today. And I just know that my listeners will really like your message as well, because we're both about positivity and upliftingness, if that's the word. Because there is this kind of stigma around sobriety. Sometimes it gets a bad reputation.
Mm-hmm.
People think it's difficult, it's boring, it's dull. Which it can be at times, but overall, my experience and your experience hasn't been that at all, quite the opposite, in fact. So yeah, if our conversation today can help people see the joys of sobriety, then, it's going to be so exciting. So do you want to start right back at the beginning? Because you've been sober for what, 2 years now, you said?
Yeah, 2 years, and then there were 2 8-month spans before that where I was sober as well. And then I found on the third try, I've really nailed it down.
Yeah. I think it's important to stress that as well. It's not the end of the world if you don't get sober straight away.
Right.
Yeah. Never give up because you will get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of like sobriety is just or getting sober, in my opinion, is about like giving yourself permission to just be authentic about who you are, and to actually like try and to put yourself out there, and to be vulnerable, and to give it a shot, because it's going to be uncomfortable. So like giving yourself permission just to fail and to put yourself out there is like, that's step one, in my opinion, before you even figure out, the roots of all the issues as to why you're doing what you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I think it's when we remove the alcohol, no matter how long it might be for this particular moment, it's only then can you begin to deal with what's going on underneath. And that's my experience. And I think that was your experience as well. So yeah, go ahead and tell us a little bit about kind of your backstory.
Yeah, sure. So I'll try and make this. I've got a pretty long story, but I'll try and make it as concise as I can. So, very sensitive kid growing up. I used to like cry when I would go to school, and I would have to go like and see the social worker, and I never really fit in socially. And so that kind of created a little bit of a problem growing up. That being said, I found out at a very young age that I was gifted athletically. So I took to sports really well. I was a 3-sport athlete, which eventually turned to 2. When I got into high school, I very early on was being looked at by some very high level colleges for sports. But later on in high school, I came across a coach who actually later got fired for being like verbally and emotionally abusive to the athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was somebody who had to deal with this individual. So this was actually both a football coach and my baseball coach. So I'm dealing with this person
Oh.
in two sports. So I really can't escape. And so in reflection, looking back, I was in full on apathy and depression. But when we're like 16, 17, and 18 years old, we're very impressionable and we don't really know,
Mm-hmm.
how to deal with these things or what our emotions are. So moving forward at this point, my mental health gets so bad that my parents don't even let me play football my senior year. And I can remember going to school and like just feeling super depressed and almost detached from my body. Um, Very dark place. So nonetheless, that summer was actually the first time that I started drinking when I graduated high school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wasn't drinking every night, but when I did drink, I was drinking to black out or to get as drunk as I could.
Yeah.
Um, and that was kind of my first dabble with substances and alcohol. Ironically, my whole life I was kind of a goody good. I was the kid that was like against it, and I never thought it was bad, and that kids who were doing this were ridiculous. And um, so I go away to college just to play baseball at a small school. It wasn't really my dream, but they offered me some academic money, so it was kind of like a no-brainer. I was like, okay, I'll just go and get some of it paid for. So yeah, go away to school. 2 weeks in, I get Epstein-Barr virus, which is an extreme form of mono.
What
Or
is
that's what
that, Alex?
Epstein-Barr virus.
Yeah, what is it exactly?
um I couldn't really break down the science of it, but the way the doctor explained it to me is that it's similar to mono, but just like double the extreme of it. So basically what happened is my throat would swell up
Mm-hmm.
all the way. And then I would drive home on the weekends and the doctors would give me like antibiotics. Uh, I'd recover while I was on the antibiotics, but when I would cease them, um, my throat would swell up and I would be spiking these like 102, 103 fevers. And then so they had to take my tonsils out. I lost 50 pounds. It took them 6 months to figure out that it was Epstein-Barr. And then it
Mm.
turned into about another year of chronic fatigue.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah. So I
Mm-hmm.
transfer home at this point, and I'm just planning to go to like a community college and live at home. And I started dabbling with steroids and anabolics. I had some friends that were into the fitness scene. They were like, you were an athlete your whole life. Like maybe this could be your new thing. And
Mm.
so like anybody who struggles with um, whether it be addiction or they just even want to stop substance use in general, one time turned into 3 years.
Yeah.
So um, I'm kind of running this rat race at this point. I get into a nasty relationship and I'm hanging out with a lot of really toxic people. That relationship turned, um, we were engaged, and that relationship turned
Mm.
verbally and emotionally abusive, both um, with her and I, and with her family as well. And so I left at that point. And so I was always very functional, and I started to fill the void with different activities so that I didn't have to deal with the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So I was holding a high level supervisor position for a big company, and I was working nights. I was training jujitsu. I was exercising. I was going to school full time
Wow.
and partying hard
Wow.
too.
Yeah.
Drinking like 2 bottles of wine a day, or popping pills. And um, I ran myself into the ground. One day I woke up and I stood up and actually fell back on my bed. I was so dizzy, I couldn't even walk.
Mm-hmm.
I had chills. And so basically, I quit everything besides my job, which was paying the bills at the time. So this
Yeah.
is where things got really bad. So I would go to work all night. I would come home. I would drink 2 bottles of wine straight out of the bottle and a bottle of NyQuil, so that I would sleep all day long, and then I
Mm-hmm.
would wake up and I would use other substances to get me through the night, like Coke or like amphetamines or anything like that, anything I could get my hands on to get me through the night. And so I'm running this cycle, and I'm becoming suicidally depressed, and I start to plan how to do it. And in my darkest moment, I used to get down on my hands and knees and ask God to like take it away from me, or to heal me, or to give me an insight that I could use moving forward. And in my darkest moment, I felt like I just had an awakening, and I realized that this could actually be the best thing that ever happened to me, and that this could all just be a learning experience. And now I had the chance to see what I didn't want to be. And now I could use those lessons to move myself forward and create a life that I love from that, and to make myself useful and of service. And it's been the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What a story. So since you got into the medication and the steroids and all of that, how many years was it between then until you kind of hit your rock bottom? Because I suppose it was a rock bottom moment, wasn't it?
Yeah, it took me a good 4 years. So I started at like 21, and I got sober sometime around 24 and a half or so.
Okay.
So I was able to get off that pretty easily, but it was like the alcohol and the other drugs that was the real challenge for me. So like actually what I realized is that the steroids was really just a gateway for those other substances, because once maybe this will be a bit graphic, but once you start injecting yourself with drugs, there's really nothing that you won't try.
Okay.
That's pretty, in my opinion, at least, like you've kind of pushed the envelope. So it's like I feel like that kind of opened me up to a lot of things that weren't good for me.
Yeah. Okay. So how did you go about then changing things? Because obviously there was this moment when you asked for help from God or whoever, and you said from that moment on, you decided that, you weren't going to put yourself through that anymore. How did you actually do it? Because there's a big change that happened.
Sure. So, honestly, I was super, super fortunate. My family told me that I had to leave because they couldn't take it anymore as well. So I was in this place where I really had no choice. Like I was going to end up homeless basically if I didn't figure it out as well, which turned out to be a good thing. But I had a mentor and a friend of mine, and he told me quite a while before I had my darkest moment that he was an alcoholic. So I reached out to him, and he's like, hey, he's like, this is awesome. He's like, we can do something about this,
Yeah.
And, I went to my first meeting, and I got involved with a community of people that could help me. And so I don't really subscribe to AA thinking anymore, but it really did help initially because it gave me some people that could really guide me and help me along, who understood what I was going through.
Yeah.
So I worked the AA steps, but really what's kept me sober in the long term is just continually working on myself. So I think like when I initially got sober, you've got to replace those old habits with new ones.
Exactly.
So it's, because you a lot of times you get sober and you're like, what do I do now instead of drinking or using?
Yeah.
So I started doing things like meditating or journaling. I started exercising or eating better, and I started actually using a lot of that time as an opportunity to learn how to heal. So like I would read like about exercise and nutrition, and I started just trying things. And slowly over time, I chipped away at it, and I kind of created my own system, which I now use in my coaching practice. And that's really been the biggest thing. So I think it's all about self-care. And eventually you can get to a point where you're so far beyond it, where you become okay with just being kind of like alone and being with yourself. But I think initially, like really replacing those old habits with the new ones is really important in that first 30, 60, 90 days, maybe even 6 months.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm similar in the sense that when I stopped drinking, it was like, okay, I'm not going to drink now no matter what. But then it was like, what am I going to do instead? So you have to find other things to do. For me in the beginning, I don't know about you, but it was just getting through like wine o'clock or beer o'clock in my case. So I had to find something to do at that particular time to change that habit first. And then, once I managed that, then I would move on to something else. So it was, I suppose, changing things like one habit at a time, one behavior at a time, one thought at a time. So what would you say to people who are kind of listening? Oh, my voice is gone funny. It's hay fever season here, so um, who are thinking, okay, you know, do I have to meditate? Do I have to start eating better? Do I have to do exercise? Do I have to journal? Because it sounds like a lot. I mean, I've done all of those things. I do all of those things. But did you jump into that straight away, or did you take it slowly and figure things out?
I think there's an element of both. And I think that when you first get sober, I think that it's really natural to feel that anxiety. So anxiety is what happens when we think we have to accomplish it all right now.
Yeah.
And so just surrendering to the process. So I've got like my five things. So at the top, I call it my 5 tenets of health. And so I look at it almost like a tree. So at the top is like the person's goals or the dreams, like who do you want to be? And then there's 5 branches that come down from that. So there's I call it fuel or nutrition, exercise or movement. You need to make sure that your rest, like, are you getting enough sleep?
Yeah.
Do you have like a holistic or a spiritual practice, whether it be like prayer or meditation or even journaling could fall under that category. If you're not religious, and that's totally fine. And then the last one is relationships. Like, do you have relationships that lift you up instead of pull you down? And so from there, what you do is you evaluate and you figure out like which ones do you feel like you need to work on first. So everybody's a little bit different, and their trauma lies in different aspects and areas of that tree. So like maybe somebody needs to work on cultivating better relationships in their life. So maybe we focus on that and just focus on one thing at a time. So like if I was going to coach somebody, if they wanted to fix their nutrition and their rest, I'd say, okay, you're getting 6 hours of sleep a night. Like for the next 4 weeks, how can we get 7 hours of sleep? Or if we're going to do nutrition, like, okay, let's look at what you're eating. You're eating once a day. Okay, let's just try twice a week for the next 4 weeks. And so what happens is you start working on yourself, and you just surrender to the process. You focus on one thing at a time. It's not sexy, everybody wants the answer right now. And the honest truth is that you kind of just have to embrace the process and learn as you go. But if you can stick it out, 12, 18 months, 2 years from now, you could be a totally different person if you just focus on fixing or improving one thing in your life every single month.
Yeah, I like that. And you're right, what you said about, it's not sexy. It's not like a magic solution to everything. It's going back to basics, really. You mentioned self-care earlier on, and I know self-care, people are like, oh, self-care, but it is important. And I think if you take a moment and listen to your body and your heart and your soul, then you can really figure out what you need to work on, whether that be sleep, relationships, nutrition, or whatever. Because I think deep down, we all know what it is that we really need. And sometimes, if somebody says, well, you need to eat better or you need to sleep more, it's like, oh, is that it? I thought it was going to be more complex than that or more magical than that. But really, I think, and tell me if you agree, it's the small things that make the biggest difference. Because if you start small, if you surrender, like you said, then it's more sustainable, isn't it? You can just keep taking baby step after baby step until you're right. You look back in 18 months, 2 years, and you are. It's, well, maybe not a different person, but you are the person who you're meant to be.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree with you. I think like just moving into like more of a contemplative mindset is really important as well. Like, that's been my biggest tool. And I used to sit when I first got sober and just look out the window, and I used to ask myself, like, what do I actually think about the circumstances of my life? Like, who do I want to be? What if I could accomplish what I my next goal. So I think when you make those kinds of shifts in your thinking, you can really start to just chip away at things. And then also, like, you could jump in, if you try to make radical change too quickly, what I find is a lot of times doors get shut on us in life. So like you'll try so hard to make something work, and it may not work out, and that's okay. So if you start small, what it does is it actually enables you to evolve over time. And if you listen to your body and you listen to your mind and your heart, it'll guide you in the right direction. Because there's no cookie cutter program that's going to fix a certain individual. Everybody's a little bit different and has different needs and situations. So just starting small, giving yourself permission to fail, because you're going to fail, and know that that's okay. And then just look at those little failures as a learning experience. You can just ask yourself, okay, what can I learn from this? And then move into the next direction, and slowly over time it'll evolve. And it won't always be fun and comfortable and blissful, but you'll get there. And it's a really special experience when you do. And I believe it's there for everybody if you want it.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. It totally is. And you're right as well. There's no kind of one size fits all. We have to figure it out for ourselves. What works for me probably hasn't worked for you, and the same goes for everybody else. But it is about being open, and I like what you said at the start about having the willingness just to try, because you can't fail, not really, if you're trying. That's the most important thing. So how does your everyday life, how does that differ now from when you were in that dark place? What have you been able to achieve, accomplish, and what does your kind of daily life look like?
Yeah, my daily life right now is, I'm packed from sun up to sundown, and it's not that I'm always working, but I'm always working on myself. So over the last, I just started small when I initially got sober, and I went to a gym around here, and I started working just 12 hours a week. And I just slowly started accumulating more and more duties. And then they gave me an opportunity to move into a personal training role. And I didn't plan for it, but I've just let it naturally evolve. And now I have my own personal training, like full-time clientele that I work with.
Wow.
So 5 days a week, I'm doing that full time. I'm up early grinding it out, or late in the evening grinding it out with clients. And then in my free time, I spend most of my time doing self-care, working on my life coaching business, getting in contact with people as far as that goes. A lot of meditation, a lot of journaling, a lot of reading. And really what's most important to me is, like, I just try to make sure that I'm useful and that I'm of service to other people. I spent a lot of my life really, really depressed and feeling detached and like I didn't fit in. And I think that if we want to, like, feel good and have good self-esteem and feel good about how we go about our lives, we have to have actions that match that or align with that. So I always try to just make sure every day that I'm showing up and doing the best that I can. And then I just let everything else go. I don't need to know everything. I don't need to control everything. I just try to embrace each day and make the most of it, and try to love the best that I can.
Yeah. Oh, well, it sounds like you're doing a wonderful job of just letting things unfold and living your life in alignment, as you say. I think it does come down to that. A question I asked myself was, is this really who I am? Is this really how I want to live? And actually, no, it wasn't. I didn't quite know back then what I wanted to do, how I wanted to live, but it wasn't what I was currently doing. And I think there's a lot to be said for just taking it slowly, taking it day by day, moment by moment, if you have to, and just seeing where life takes you, I suppose, as long as you are always thinking about what you want, not, where you were. It's,
Mhm.
to me, it's about changing it around, because as we said, there's a lot of shame and stigma surrounding sobriety. It does get a bit of a bad name, but if you can always change it round and make the focus positive like you have, then it just make it more of a joyful journey, even when it's difficult and,
Yeah,
tough.
definitely.
Mm.
Definitely. And honestly, I think the biggest mistake that I see people make is they are starting to do the work, and they're starting to get in touch with, who they want to be or where they want to go. Um, and maybe they get clear on that, but they wait for it. And I think what you have to do is you have to take conscious action in the direction of your dream. I think that that's super important. Um, yeah. A lot of people wait for it to come to them, and so just move forward and go for it. That's what I would say. Take that leap of faith, because it's not the perfect anything isn't coming. You're gonna have to go get it and put some effort in.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's one thing being open to the universe or whatever and surrendering, but at the same time, nothing is just going to fall on your lap without you putting a bit of effort in. And it does take effort to change a behavior that you've been doing for so long.
Mm-hmm.
There's a really nice quote. I can't remember who it's by. And it's like, if you want to see big changes, then you have to change something big or something like that. Basically, if you want things to change, then you have to change, or at least put the effort in to start changing. Um, it's like, nothing changes if nothing changes. You can't expect to suddenly magically be this version of yourself without putting a little bit of effort in. Um, maybe people don't want to hear that, but it's true. I didn't get sober by accident. You didn't get sober by accident. We had to do something about it,
Mm-hmm.
which is important. You have to do something about it, and you can do something about it. And you'll find your way of doing that thing, however you manage to do it.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, I think breaking addictions and habits is one of the most difficult things you can do.
Mm-hmm.
um, but it actually can be kind of fun if you allow it to be, um, because it's really cool. Like that first time when you have like a breakthrough, just
Yeah.
like that feeling is like, whoa, like this is possible for me.
Yeah.
So like, for me, it's like if I wanted to go and have a drink that first time that I attempted to get sober, if I wanted to break my sobriety, like just to pause and to say stop, like my brain is just telling me this story, and then
Mm-hmm.
just to kind of sit with it for a second and to move on. You've just really created a whole new and I'm no neuroscientist, but like a whole new pathway in your
Yes,
brain that says, oh, like we can do something different here. And so
exactly.
just knowing that, like that's really powerful for people. So I like to sometimes when because I've got an addictive personality, so I can get stuck on doing things. I'll just stop and I'll sit with things and I'll just wait and I'll identify like the story that my mind is telling me, and
Mm-hmm.
then I'll just move forward and make a different choice in the direction that I do want to go. And the emotions that are associated with that are really powerful, because you just start to realize you're not actually bound by the stories that your brain and body are always telling you.
Yeah, that's true. And it feels good, doesn't it, when you get through a situation where previously you wouldn't have been able to get through it. When you make that different choice, it does feel really good.
Yeah.
Um, so just before we go, what would you say to our listeners right now? What one piece of advice would you give them if they are thinking, yes, I need to change? What would you say to them?
Sure. The first thing I would say would be one, give yourself permission to fail, permission to be authentic, permission to try new things, and give yourself permission to live your fullest, happiest, and healthiest life. The
Yeah.
second thing I would say would be to reach out for help. It takes more strength to ask for help than it does to not. So I would reach out, and whether it be getting a coach like somebody like myself or trying an AA meeting, there's a lot of options out there. But just get some help, because sometimes when you're first starting out, and especially if you have a lot of trauma like I did, you need somebody to love you until you can love yourself.
Yeah.
So just having somebody who can guide you, who's been there, and help you navigate the space, I think that that's really powerful. And number 3 is just surrender to it and allow yourself to evolve over time. Start small, and just embrace each phase. Don't look at each phase as, if you fail or if you fall off track, don't look at it like a downfall or like there's something wrong with you. Just know that there's a lesson in that, and then you just moving forward from there, and allow it to happen over time, and make it fun, like the best you can. Try to enjoy each phase of life. We're here to love and enjoy our time. So that's the best advice I can give somebody.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. It is such good advice. So I'm going to put all of your information in the show notes. You're on Facebook and Instagram. So if anybody wants to learn more about you or contact you or, anything else, then go to the show notes. I'll put a link in there as well, so you can contact Alex or learn more about him. So thank you. It's been a pleasure. A lovely, uplifting start to my afternoon. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And for everybody listening, if you want to get in touch with me, you can find me again on Facebook. That's Alex Bales, Bales. Or you can find me on Instagram, which is Sober Fit Alex. And even if you don't want to do some coaching with me, if you just want to talk and chat and get in touch and say, hey, I heard you on the podcast and I really enjoyed it, I would be just so grateful to hear from you. So thank you to all your listeners. Thank you, Gail, for having me on. I greatly appreciate it so much. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, then please share and subscribe. For more help and support, go to the Sober Bliss website, soberbliss.com. Connect with me on social media and learn how I can help you quit drinking and start living.